Started tracking it, and yeah, I found the same thing, that Hey,
StarSpill USA family, and welcome back to Sister Wives Crew, the only channel that dares to dig deeper, go further, and pull the mask off the stories the network doesn't just avoid, they actively bury, the confessions they edit out, the receipts they pray to keep sealed, and the secrets they hope you never discover. For over a decade, audiences have been served a carefully polished illusion. A manufactured reality packaged by TLC, the smiling Brown family, the rehearsed laughter, the stage drama that always seemed to resolve in the name of faith and unity. But tonight, we rip off that glossy wrapping to show you the rotten core beneath it all. Because the real story behind the Sister Wives saga isn't a tale of love, resilience, or modern plural marriage. It's a story of betrayal, financial manipulation, and a hidden toot system where one woman sat on the throne while the others unknowingly worked as pawns to finance her castle. And the most devastating part, the truth didn't come from a TV edit, a producer leak, or a dramatic confessional. It came from someone who lived in the house itself. Someone who saw it all, day after day, year after year. Her name, Mindy Jessup. To casual viewers, she was nothing more than the nanny, a niece in the shadows of Robyn Brown's Shira Chateau, wrangling kids, cooking meals, and occasionally whispered about in fan theories. But in reality, she was something much more dangerous to Cody and Robyn's carefully crafted empire, the ultimate embedded witness. A ghost in the system who was there 5, sometimes 6 days a week, 10 hours at a stretch. Invisible to cameras but present when it mattered most, after TLC packed up. After the microphones were off, after Cody slammed the door and started raging. After Robyn dropped her performative tears and turned back into cold calculation. She was there when secrets were whispered, when documents were left carelessly on desks, when envelopes sat on kitchen counters revealing more than anyone was supposed to know, and when she finally stepped into the courtroom of Brown v. Brown. Insiders tell us the very air shifted like thunder rolling through a room just before lightning strikes. Cody's jaw tightened until his face went pale, his blustering bravado drained from him in seconds. Robyn's designer mascara, usually weaponized for sympathy, smudged into something far less glamorous. Panic. Real unfiltered fear. Because they knew exactly what Mindy had seen. They knew once she spoke, the house of cards they'd balanced for over a decade would come crashing down, not just in court, but in front of the world. And then the bombshell landed. Mindy revealed she wasn't being paid like a typical nanny. No Venmo. No personal checks tucked into envelopes at the end of the week. No family stipend the way Janelle, Christine, or Meri might have expected. Instead, her wages came from something deliberately constructed, KN&R Holdings LLC. That's right, an entire corporate entity. A private business account funded by Quiet. Regular transfers siphoned out of the so-called Family Traditions LLC pot, the very account Cody used to justify his lectures about sacrifice. The very account Christine and Janelle were told was nearly empty as they agonized on TV over every dollar. Think about the hypocrisy. On one side, you had Janelle, the financial rock shown building spreadsheets, strategizing, even skipping meals and saving pennies to pay down mortgages, filmed agonizing over whether she could even afford to build on the Coyote Pass land she had invested her savings into. You had Christine crying in confessionals about scraping enough money to move to Utah, pinching pennies to fund her independence. You had Meri isolated, sidelined, clinging to scraps of attention, repeatedly told to be grateful she was still included. And then on the other side, you had Mindy, the nanny, pulling down nearly $80,000 a year in salary, paid like clockwork every 2 weeks. Not from Cody's sacrifices, not from Robyn's supposed belt-tightening, but from an account secretly fattened with TLC deposits. My sister wife's closet revenue and money siphoned out of the family pot. Crew, let that sink in. That's not a nanny's wage. That's what insiders call hush money, disguised as payroll, wrapped in legitimacy, but serving as a financial cushion for silence. And Mindy, sitting steady on the stand, confirmed she had seen it with her own eyes. Bank statements left on Cody's desk, envelopes scattered on kitchen counters, balances that contradicted every sob story Cody told Christine and Janelle. I saw money moving from Family Traditions LLC into KN&R Holdings, she testified. And I saw it being spent while the rest of the wives were told we were broke. Boom. Silence. Imagine that revelation echoing in a courtroom where the wives who carried this family for years had been told to scrape and sacrifice, all while a hidden vault was being built behind their backs. And now, every infamous moment on the show is reframed. Cody's rage at Christine for selling her house and daring to claim her own equity, exposed as fear that her independence would unravel the carefully hidden financial structure. His fury at Janelle for buying an RV, calling her reckless and impulsive, now revealed as panic, because that RV represented the first major asset she had purchased beyond his reach, beyond his ability to leverage or refinance or quietly drain. And Robyn's endless weeping about just wanting unity. Stripped bare, those crocodile tears collapse under receipts. Victoria's Secret orders, online shopping sprees, expensive jewelry, all while Christine rationed hope. Janelle pinched pennies, and Meri was gaslit into believing her marginalization was her fault. And then came the dagger, the moment Christine and Janelle's attorney asked Mindy the fatal question: who paid your salary? And with calm, devastating clarity, she answered KN&R Holdings LLC. Not Cody, not Robyn personally, not the family, an LLC, a corporate shell. A wall designed to separate their wealth from the reach of the other wives. Boom. The jury leaned forward. Eyewitnesses say Cody glared daggers across the room, his face twisted with rage he couldn't control. Robyn shifted, squirmed, her performance collapsing as her entire victim narrative burned alive in the fire of hard evidence. And then Christine and Janelle's lawyer drove the blade deeper, presenting exhibits, transfers, deposits, expenditures, every number, every purchase aligning perfectly with Mindy's testimony. The facade shattered. The TLC fairy tale, a decade in the making, went up in flames. And here's why it matters, crew. Because this isn't just sloppy bookkeeping. This isn't just a patriarch who didn't know how to manage money. This is betrayal, deliberate and systemic, weaponized against women who gave everything. It reframes the entire history of sister wives. It proves the family unity you saw on TV was nothing more than a mirage, a mask hiding favoritism, manipulation and financial deceit. Women who poured their loyalty, their labor, and their savings into the dream were unknowingly financing their own downfall. Their sacrifices siphoned into a vault they could never access, guarded by an LLC, designed to keep them locked out. And here at StarSpill USA, we will not stop digging. We'll continue to bring you the testimonies, the documents, the receipts. Cracks in the facade the network will never air, because if you believe Christine, Janelle, and Meri deserve to have their truth finally heard, then smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that bell, because trust me, crew, Mindy's testimony was just the opening act. And what comes next won't just shake the sister wives empire, it will burn it to the ground for everyone to see.
I felt just like I had just endured 2 years of betrayal from Janelle. I triggered so badly.
For over a decade, the Brown family presented themselves as a living experiment in faith, unity, and plural marriage, a smiling portrait sold to millions of viewers through carefully edited TLC episodes, glossy confessionals, and staged drama, carefully arranged to hide the fractures beneath the surface. But when the walls finally cracked, it wasn't because of a wife's rebellion, a child's act of defiance, or even the gradual unraveling that audiences suspected. It was because of the one person no one ever paid attention to. The quiet figure who drifted through the background like a shadow. The woman who slipped in and out of frames unseen. Robyn Brown's niece and longtime nanny, Mindy Jessup, who, unlike the cameras that came and went with production schedules, had been inside the home more than anyone else. Who had lived in the underbelly of the so-called family dream, who had watched the unfiltered chaos play out in real time 5 and 6 days a week for nearly 10 hours at a stretch, who had overheard the whispered strategy sessions between Cody and Robyn, as they plotted in plain sight how to isolate the other wives and tighten financial control, who had seen with her own eyes the bank statements and envelopes left out carelessly on kitchen counters and office desks, statements showing large balances hidden inside a corporate shell account, proof that the supposed scarcity was nothing but a manufactured illusion, and who, when finally placed under oath in the case of Brown v. Brown, shattered the fragile illusion the Browns had spent years selling, leaving Cody's face drained of blood and pale with fury, Robyn's mascara running from real fear rather than rehearsed sympathy, and the courtroom silent, stunned, suspended in the raw weight of a truth that spilled like poison long buried but finally forced into the light. She explained she wasn't paid casually, not by personal checks slipped from a family wallet, not by Venmo, like a struggling household scraping by might pay a babysitter, but through KN&R Holdings LLC, a deliberately constructed private entity whose sole purpose, she testified, was to funnel money away from the family traditions LLC account that Cody used as a hammer of guilt. The account the wives were constantly told was empty, depleted, broken. Justification for endless sacrifice, meaning that while Janelle was on camera agonizing over whether she could even afford to build on her Coyote Pass plot despite pouring hundreds of thousands into the collective fund, while Christine was filmed in tears about scraping together enough to move to Utah and start fresh, while Meri was sidelined, clinging to scraps of belonging in a family that had long since abandoned her. Mindy, the nanny, the ghost of the household, was being paid nearly $80,000 a year in wages, not from Cody's pocket, not from Robyn's purse, but from the very account fattened by TLC deposits, siphoned transfers, and even the long-collapsed remnants of the My Sister Wives closet business, wages that sources now call hush money disguised as payroll. And Mindy, steady and unshaken, confirmed that she had seen the evidence herself, deposits flowing regularly into KN&R Holdings, while Cody stood before cameras and spun himself as a martyr drowning under the weight of family debts, weaponizing poverty as narrative while building a private vault of financial security for himself and his favorite wife, shielding their comfort with corporate paper walls while the rest of the family carried the illusion of scarcity like a cross. But she didn't stop there. She went further, cutting deeper into the narrative, recounting conversations burned into her memory where Cody dismissed Christine's desperate pleas for him to see their daughter Isabel before her scoliosis surgery, waving it off not as a father concerned with a child's pain, but as a manipulative tactic meant to control him. Words so cold they drew audible gasps from the jury. And Robyn, ever the whisperer at his side, stroked his ego in that moment, telling him he couldn't give in, that he had to show strength, that his time was a crown to be earned. A phrase so drenched in narcissism that Mindy testified it branded itself into her mind forever. And she recalled how, after those moments of poisonous reinforcement, Cody would simply switch off his phone, disappear, vanish into the cocoon of Robyn's household, leaving Christine and her daughter in despair, forced to face medical crises without a father's presence, while he convinced himself he was the king of a kingdom rather than the parent of a suffering child. She remembered Cody ranting that Janelle thought she was the CFO of the family, reducing her decades of budgeting and sacrifice to the sneer of just an employee. And Robyn, careful, calculated, cloaking poison in silk, responded that Janelle was too independent, that she needed less autonomy, suggesting to Cody that if he tightened the budget and cut her access, if he forced her to come to him for every dollar. She would be reminded of the patriarchal order, and Mindy testified this wasn't venting. This wasn't harmless marital frustration, but deliberate strategy. Power plays rehearsed and repeated until the other wives were emotionally cornered. And financially strangled, every choice turned into an act of disobedience, every step toward independence reframed as rebellion. These weren't conversations about family unity. They were blueprints of isolation, manipulations disguised as concern, control mechanisms dressed up as loyalty. And in that courtroom, when Mindy described Robyn placing her hand on Cody's chest while he muttered about the burden of his crown, jurors leaned forward in disbelief, hearing not the words of a man struggling to hold a family together, but of a man drunk on control, flattered into delusion, supported by a co-strategist who knew exactly how to feed his vanity and sharpen his cruelty. When the defense tried to shred her credibility, painting her as bitter, biased, a disgruntled ex-employee allied with Christine, Mindy did not falter. She pointed out that she had remained not for Cody, not for Robyn, not for the money, but for the children, Dayton, Aurora, Brianna, Solomon, Ariella, that she had loved them, that she had endured years of silence out of fear, out of duty, out of the hope that someone had to be a constant presence in their lives, while their parents built walls of secrecy around themselves. She admitted she took the paycheck, but she reminded the court that wages do not erase conscience, that money does not mean complicity forever. And then she delivered the line that cracked the facade once and for all. "I am not co-signing the lie anymore." In that instant, the mask fell completely. Cody was stripped of the patriarch persona he had crafted for cameras and revealed as a manipulator who siphoned family resources into private vaults while demanding ever more sacrifice. From wives already stretched to breaking, Robyn was unmasked, not as the weeping peacemaker she portrayed, but as the co-conspirator whispering poison into his ear, reinforcing his delusions, feeding his ego, insulating themselves at the expense of everyone else. And the jury, for the first time, saw the family not as a struggling experiment in faith, but as a stage play designed to hide exploitation. A house of cards built on favoritism, deceit, and betrayal. Its foundation rotting long before the cameras ever stopped rolling. Eyewitnesses said that as court adjourned that day, Christine and Janelle crossed the room and embraced Mindy in tears. A raw, wordless moment of vindication after years of gaslighting and marginalization, proof that the truth they had lived was not paranoia, not exaggeration, but real, undeniable, and now public. It was a reminder that loyalty does not erase injustice, that silence does not protect the vulnerable forever. And yet, even then, everyone in that courtroom felt the weight of what was still to come. Because as devastating as Mindy's testimony had been, exposing financial betrayal, emotional manipulation, and the unmasking of a couple who styled themselves as rulers rather than partners, the sense was clear. This was only the beginning. The next phase, the questioning that would drag into the open the hypocrisy of COVID protocols, the selective lockdowns, the rules enforced like scripture on some wives while conveniently bent for others. The lies told to children about safety, while doors were open for Robyn's chosen few. The duplicity that tore the family apart in front of cameras, but was far worse behind them, would reveal an even darker layer of betrayal. Hypocrisy so staggering it would not only crush the defense's narrative, but forever change the world's understanding of what truly happened inside the Brown household, showing that what millions of viewers believed was a story of faith and family was, in reality, a decade-long illusion built on secrecy, favoritism, manipulation, and lies. A cautionary tale of how power, money, and control can masquerade as love and unity until the truth, dragged from the shadows, finally forces the empire to crumble before the world.
There was once upon a time, there was trust and love and connection and, a few.
Her testimony wasn't just about money or manipulation anymore. It had evolved into something far larger, far darker, and far more devastating. A matter not only of broken trust, but of life and death. And by the time court resumed for day 2, the energy in the room was electric, the air almost vibrating with anticipation because everyone sensed the storm on the horizon. Cody and Robyn entered the courtroom visibly drained, their once smug confidence replaced by exhaustion, fear, and the unmistakable look of two people who knew the walls were finally closing in. And Christine and Janelle's attorney, the razor-sharp Anna Charama, wasted no time in steering the series. Spotlight toward the most explosive chapter in Sister Wives history, Cody's infamous COVID-19 protocols. The suffocating list of draconian rules that not only fractured his relationships with Christine and Janelle, but also drove a devastating wedge between him and his own children, all under the false pretense of safety. On television, viewers saw a patriarch scrubbing groceries with alcohol pads, enforcing extreme isolation, wagging his finger at wives and children about compliance, and presenting himself as a noble martyr, sacrificing holidays, milestones, and even a daughter's surgery in the name of protection. But Mindy Jessup was inside the house every day, living behind the curtain of the staged performance. And under oath, she ripped the mask away, exposing that those rules were never about health, never about safety, but about control. Calm, deliberate, unflinching. She explained how Cody's no visitors decree was weaponized against Christine and Janelle's children, forbidding Gabriel and Garrison from stepping foot in their father's home, keeping him absent from Isabel's critical scoliosis surgery, fracturing bonds so deeply that the wounds may never fully heal. And yet, at the very same time, behind the doors of Robyn's mansion, a parallel world existed, a world of hypocrisy and double standards. So brazen that jurors audibly shifted in disgust as Mindy testified that Robyn's parents visited freely. Her sister Terillis and her family came often. Even friends from Utah dropped by. None of them masked, none of them quarantined. All of them hugging, laughing, eating meals at the same table, while Cody himself joined right in, playing with the kids, embracing relatives, behaving as if the pandemic had never existed. When Cody fretted that the crew or the other wives might find out, Robyn soothed him with words that cut straight to the rotten core of the scheme. We can trust our people. It's not the same as Janelle's boys who are out gallivanting. This is a closed circle. And with that single phrase, the fragile illusion shattered. The rules weren't universal. They weren't protective. They weren't grounded in science or safety. They were loyalty tests. Restrictions selectively applied to isolate the disobedient while fortifying Cody and Robyn's private bubble, transforming the plural marriage into nothing more than a lie sustained for television, while the real family had already been dismantled behind the scenes. The defense's response was almost comical in its weakness. Attorney Mr. Croft tried to argue that Mindy couldn't possibly know whether visitors had quarantined beforehand. But she calmly dismantled the claim, pointing out that Robyn's sister was working a public-facing job at the time, that her parents had been traveling the country in an RV, and that none of them had isolated. And most damningly, she reminded the court that Cody had demanded Janelle's sons quit their jobs, end relationships, and give up pieces of their lives just to earn the right to see him, standards he never once enforced on Robyn's kin. The hypocrisy wasn't a matter of perception. It was written into the rules themselves. And by the time Mindy stepped down, she had not merely bruised Cody and Robyn's credibility, she had annihilated it. She proved beyond all doubt that the pandemic had been weaponized, twisted into the final cruel instrument of control to sever family ties and consolidate power. And in doing so, she transformed from the quiet background figure into the ultimate insider, the truth teller, who revealed motive, malice, and premeditated deceit with a weight of lived experience that no defense could undermine. Closing arguments only widened the gulf. Croft stood first, grasping at straws, attempting to reframe the case as nothing more than a messy divorce. A story of scorned ex-wives inflating financial misunderstandings, and exaggerating hurt feelings in an effort to exact revenge. But when Anna Chirama rose, the temperature in the courtroom changed. Insiders later described her closing as one of the most devastating summations ever delivered. With surgical precision, she walked the jury back through every betrayal, the siphoning of money into KN&R Holdings while wives were told the family account was empty. The whispered strategy sessions where a child's desperate surgery was dismissed as manipulation. The tightening of financial leashes designed to punish Janelle's independence. And finally, the monstrous COVID hypocrisy that turned Cody's own children into outcasts while Robyn's family feasted at his table. And then, with the jury leaning forward, she looked each one of them in the eye and said the words that sealed the case. This was never about safety, it was about preference, isolation, and control. Deliberations took less than 4 hours. Lightning fast for a case so complex, a sign not of confusion but of clarity. When the jury returned, their verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts: breach of fiduciary duty, financial malfeasance, unjust enrichment, an intentional infliction of emotional distress. A clean sweep, a total collapse of Cody and Robyn's carefully constructed defense. The damages were staggering. Millions awarded to Christine and Janelle, including the restoration of their Coyote Pass investments. A share of all TLC earnings funneled through KN&R Holdings, plus interest. An amount so crushing it would force the sale of Robyn's mansion and undeveloped land. But it was the emotional damages that struck deepest. Unprecedented sums awarded with written acknowledgement that Mindy Jessup's testimony was the key. That her words had laid bare a pattern of malicious intent, deceit, and cruelty so egregious the court could not ignore it. Chaos erupted. Cody exploded, shouting about betrayal and injustice until security dragged him out. Robyn clutched her rosary and wept uncontrollably, her tears no longer theatrical but raw, panicked, and unconvincing. Christine and Janelle, by contrast, sat, tall and dignified, embracing their attorney, then embracing Mindy, the tearful nanny who had risked everything to break her silence. Outside the courthouse, the women spoke little. Only Janelle's calm words echoed with finality. Today, the truth came out. We're ready to move on. And with that, the myth of the Brown family, the glossy facade of unity, faith, and plural harmony was buried. Cody, once cast as patriarch, was unmasked as a manipulator and a con man. Robyn, once painted as the victim peacemaker, exposed as his co-strategist and enabler. And the entire empire collapsed, not because of a rebellious wife or a defiant child, but because of one quiet shadow in the background, the nanny. Mindy Jessup, who refused to co-sign the lie any longer, who liberated not only Christine and Janelle, but the truth itself, proving that power, greed, and manipulation can masquerade as love and unity for years, until the day it is finally dragged into the light. And that crew is the story the cameras never showed you. The story that shattered the illusion once and for all. And here at StarSpill USA, we are committed to bringing you every hidden detail, every untold truth, and every piece of this saga as it unfolds, because some lies are too big to ignore and some stories demand to be told, and to be told.